What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're gonna be talking about Way of X number 3 by Cy Spurrier and Bob Quinn. And in this video, we are going to learn that Kurt is trying to find the right time to warn everyone that Onslaught is coming, all the while to ensure more mutants are invested in Krakoa's first law, make more mutants. Meanwhile, Legion is trying to help two wildly incompatible new X-Men get their freak on, all the while hiding his ulterior motives. And more importantly, a former X-Man and sex worker reveals a startling truth about all the baby making going on Krakoa. We're gonna talk about all this and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoy the video, I humbly ask that you Hulk smash that like button because it really helps the channel out. That said, let's hit that intro.
Word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple eyes. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Okay, Way of X, number 3. Nightcrawler has been on a tear since the Hellfire Gala began, getting white girl wasted and making quite the fool of himself. He means well, he really does. He's just trying to help Krakoa's mutants who appreciate life and believe in something greater than selfish pleasures in a land where that's all that really exists. Healing gardens, resurrection protocols, a bar where literally everything is on tap and no one has to pay, portals to take you wherever you want, whenever you want, an island that gives you whatever you want, whenever you want. No one cares about what Kurt is offering, and it doesn't help that he's embarrassing himself, whether it's hitting on his now pregnant ex-girlfriend Megan from OG Excalibur, or throwing up on Mercury and Loa, or trying to steal Dazzler's microphone, or even eavesdropping on a secret meeting between Magneto and his former daughter, Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, labeled the pretender and enemy of the state of Krakoa, only he doesn't even realize that he's eavesdropping on this because he's 3 sheets in the wind. Where things get cracking in this issue of Way of X is when Legion approaches, reminding him of the mission at hand, that Onslaught is looking over the gala and is attracted by neglected energy. And right now, there's literally dozens, no, scratch that, hundreds of mutants on Krakoa right now, and they all have an itch to clap some cheeks, something Dr. Nemesis derides as unnecessary since he could literally pick any 2 mutants, regardless of gender most likely, and give them a baby. Something made even more interesting when Nightcrawler was preaching making more mutants to Kyle Jindal, Northstar's husband. You know, considering the fact that this is a gay couple, it would be quite impossible for them to naturally make children. It does kind of create a problematic vibe when it comes to the whole statement of making more mutants. How are you going to treat the same-sex couples on Krakoa? They can't just miracle up children. Maybe this isn't the move, but either way, Nightcrawler decides that talk of eugenics is not the way either, and winds up bumping into the perfect person to discuss the matters of cheeks with, and that would be former X-Man and new warrior Stacy X, a woman whose claim to fame, besides being a former X-Man and new warrior, was also being a sex worker. And before anyone says anything, sex work is work just the same. If you can make money selling pictures of your bare ass and pay your bills with it, you'd do it too. Don't even lie about it. Anyways, Stacy X is important here because she's got her finger on the pulse of Krakoa's sex drive. You see, while Nightcrawler was worried mutants weren't making enough babies, it's quite the opposite. Mutants are getting jiggy with it at an all-time high. That's actually why she was at the gala handing out condoms. May as well be safe, am I right? Now, let's be clear. While STDs are the least of anyone's concerns with modern mutant medicine and healing available, available. The reason this is brought up is because Stacy X runs a little operation on Krakoa called the Bower, what Kurt calls a brothel in the Garden of Eden, but Kurt is a bit naive. Whatever. The thing is, lonely mutants come to the Bower and get Stacy X's help to feel better. She uses her mutant power to control pheromones to help her patrons relax and be more themselves. Now, the thing about her power is she can't make someone do anything they didn't already want to do. So all this is doing is opening them up to make them the best version of themselves, or at least more open to being that way. She's even helping them hook up with other mutants that they normally wouldn't have dared to try to hook up with because they were afraid of rejection. Another thing the Bower has is the byproduct of all the mutant sexy time happening on the island: babies. As Stacy puts it, Krakoa has plenty of mutants. They don't need more mutants. They need more parents. The mutant babies born on the island have been largely discarded, abandoned, and neglected. Some have even been brought to them to Stacy while smiling and left them, as she said, like laundry. By her count, they're averaging one new baby a week. This breaks Kurt's heart because the law of making more mutants is a law that he suggested, and this was a law that he was very fervent about following, and the creation of more mutants is supposed to be the most important thing on Krakoa, considering it's the first law of the nation. And this is not what he intended for it to be. Not at all. One good thing here, though, is that there's at least one mutant on Krakoa who's there to look after the children. Our old friend Lost, the mutant who had, oddly enough, lost their powers during the decimation, but recently got them back after going through the Crucible in Way of X #1. And though we have been calling her Lost, I'd rather call her by the name that Stacy recalls of her, Marinette, seeing as Stacy X knew Marinette back in the day pre-decimation. Marinette is thriving here because she loves children and they need her. She has purpose now, and the best part is that her power to warp and manipulate gravity doesn't affect the babies there because their inner ear bones have yet to develop. So the fact that she can't control her powers that would normally make her such a pariah on this island, it's a non-factor here. Unfortunately, it's here where we are reminded that negative emotions are a safe haven for Krakoa's new boogeyman, Onslaught. So let's double back a little bit. While all this was going on, Legion was helping Pixie by helping Mercury and Loa have happy sex time with one another. Due to the nature of Loa's abilities, her power letting her to pass through solid matter by molecularly reconfiguring that matter, and then when she passes through, that said matter is left destroyed in various ways, sometimes crumbling to dust or falling apart as if it were shredded. The problem here is that if she gets worked up, she loses control of her powers and she could wind up hurting someone. You know, getting worked up as in getting that back blown out. And the funny thing is, the theory of her hurting someone has already been proven by the time Legion shows up and Mercury is holding up the shredded pieces of her hand. Legion is here to help them by using a trick he used to use with his love, blindfold, to have sex using their powers. A mind meld. This is a technique that gives all involved parties access to every single thought or memory or anything really that is within that person, even their deepest, darkest secrets that they don't want anyone to know about. If you are a sci-fi fan of any magnitude, you likely already know what this is. I shouldn't even have to explain it to you. We've seen the mind meld in things like Star Trek and Mass Effect. It's roughly the exact same thing. Despite all that, this is something that's going to become incredibly troubling for the two would-be mutant lovers, Loa and Mercury, because not only are they witnessing each other's secrets and desires, but so too are Legion. And while the Zorn brothers are present, they're not here to witness lesbian mind melding. They're simply here for the reason that Legion is. The negative emotions that arise as Loa learns more about Mercury's past and vice versa, and their darkest desires and the things they want in life, it causes fear from Loa and anger in response from Mercury. All of this is doing exactly what Legion wants, though. These two unleashing their hidden desires upon one another causes a rift between them and lures the true threat out, Onslaught. And when Legion and the Zorn brothers prepare their strike against Onslaught, he deuces out, heading to another site of negative emotions. Remember, we were talking about the Bower earlier and the mutant Marinette. Well, that's exactly where we left off, when Fabian Cortez gets ejected from the bed of a particular mutant whose name escapes me at this precise moment in time, but I'm sure someone in the comments will likely name that mutant, and I will be forever grateful. However, Fabian tried getting a cup of brown sugar, and his interest in Magneto seemingly put her off, as he wanted her to wear the helmet while they had coitus. But Fabian's dismissal riles up the children, and as a result, riles up Marinette, who particularly doesn't care for Fabian, recalling that he was an acolyte. We don't really know exactly what her beef is with the acolytes, or if it's just how she connects them to Magneto and how he treated her in the Crucible, or if there's something from her past dealing with the acolytes that makes her hate them. We're never specifically told, but I'm leaning more towards the latter than the former. I think she has history with the acolytes that we don't know about yet, and whatever it is, she ends up unleashing the full brunt of her abilities on Fabian. This and Fabian's response leads to Onslaught manifesting around Marinette, but Pixie is able to put Marinette to sleep using her abilities. But unfortunately, this allows Onslaught to break away without any trace of his whereabouts once again. This actually leads into a theory that was presented to me by a friend of the channel and personal friend, Scott Yar, who suggests that the reason Onslaught is manifesting now is because he somehow was uploaded or manifested within Xavier's consciousness when he was resurrected after dying, being assassinated in X-Force number 1 when Dawn of X began, and more importantly, that Onslaught, having tainted Xavier's backup, may have already compromised Charles and may even have compromised Magneto. Another interesting point brought up is why Legion resurrected himself rather than let Charles do it himself. This is actually giving a little bit more credence to the notion that maybe this was to avoid any potential tainting of himself by Onslaught. And what if the reason Onslaught is so able to invade the minds of so many mutants on Krakoa is because every time one is resurrected, Onslaught slips in through the back door due to Xavier being the one uploading their minds? This is something that I'm actually giving a lot of thought towards because it makes the most sense. It does seem to kind of lean in that direction that Onslaught has literally just been lying in wait. I know a lot of times we talk about the prospect of characters like Cassandra Nova who have done something very similar in the past, and even something that was done very recently in the alternate reality Heroes Reborn story arc, Heroes Reborn, Magneto and the Mutant Force number 1. So yeah, I mean, this is all stuff that's very possible, and it's kind of crazy to think about, but I do appreciate the fact in this book that we are actually discussing the hard questions. We're asking ourselves tough questions. And I know there has been a little bit of backlash. I know Cy Spurrier caught a little bit of heat because people aren't able to separate fiction from the real world, and they are blaming Cy Spurrier for, the mutants being awful. The thing is, he's trying to present a situation to let us know this is not okay. There are questions that people have not asked, and he is giving you the tough answers of what would happen when a society that by all intents and purposes has become hedonistic in their recent successes. It makes the most sense that, yeah, maybe there are people out there, as Stacy X points out, that are doing it the traditional way, raising the children, not just kicking them all to the curb, but there's also probably just as many, if not more, people who are just kicking the babies to the curb. And right now, Krakoa has no adoption program, so up until this point, we don't know what's going to happen to these kids. And another thing to consider is what happens if the kids are human and not mutant. You have to remember, it takes time unless the child is born a Morlock. It takes anywhere from the kid becoming age 4 to 6 to start showing any signs of being a mutant to as late as being 13, 14, or 15 years old to start showing signs of an active X gene. We've even talked about it in a previous video where the character Rhapsody didn't show any signs of being a mutant until she was in her early 20s. So yeah, it does actually bring up some very potent questions, and the idea of the value of making babies, the first law of Krakoa, and how mutants are, taking to it. It's almost, I don't know, I feel like Cy Spurrier asked a very important question and we got a very important answer. Just because it's not the answer you want doesn't necessarily make it a bad answer. This is all storytelling and building, and I'm here for it. This is actually probably, Way of X has probably become one of the best books when it comes to explaining more about what's going on Krakoa and why things are not okay. Cy Spurrier is doing what I think a lot of people have criticized about the current run of House of X and Ten of Swords and the current state of the X-Men, criticizing realizing and maybe shining a light on things that are problematic about what the mutants of the Marvel Comics universe are now, their new status in life. And yes, while I do enjoy celebrating their successes, sometimes we do have to shine a light on their failures as well, even if they are character flaws. And look, before I get out of here with this one, I definitely want to say one last thing, and that is about Nightcrawler in this issue, where Cy Spurrier, and I think a lot of people weren't expecting this, and I think this is another reason why he caught some heat for this issue, is the fact that Nightcrawler is probably one of the most beloved characters in the history of not just the X-Men, but I would even dare say in Marvel Comics, period. And he has been putting Nightcrawler on blast for the last 3 issues. This one more specifically because of the fact that, yeah, he is kind of coming off as a sanctimonious piece of shit. And you know what, maybe piece of shit is too strong, but he's definitely come off as incredibly sanctimonious, lording his Catholic beliefs over everyone else. He's been doing that for time immemorial, but ever since House of X, in a realm where his beliefs are kind of outdated, outmoded, and no one really cares, he's trying to push beliefs and religion on a society that doesn't want it, and more importantly, just the way he acts so dismissively towards some things that happen in this book, like when Stacy X reveals the Bower to him, how he just like, oh my god, yeah. Come on, dude, stop being so sanctimonious. You are the guy who used to sleep with your own half-sister on the reg. Don't sit up here and play with me, acting like you're on the high horse. I remember who the Amanda Sefton is, and that's all we're gonna say about that. But yeah, I think a lot of people just didn't like the fact that Nightcrawler has been put on blast, and more importantly, the fact that he was the one who was all about mutants getting their freak on Krakoa and making more mutants, and he suddenly now is realizing that the message that he had in mind was not the message that everyone else had in mind. And I'm sorry, but this is your bed. You now have to fix it. And I know this may come off as, sounding harsh. Don't get me wrong. I love Nightcrawler too, but a lot of times, just like how I'm a huge fan of the character Daredevil, I sometimes don't jive with everything they say. And this is coming from a guy who was born and raised Catholic. So it makes me hate them even more sometimes when they push their beliefs on other people, because I'm sorry, that's just not how the world is supposed to work. Just because you have a system of belief and a faith system and morals and guidelines that you follow doesn't mean that everyone else has the same thing. Not to mention, I really hate how prudish Nightcrawler is acting about other mutants having sex or having a place to have sex when he was the guy who came up with the rule in the first place about making more mutants with that sly ass smirk that he had in House of X number 6. Anyway, that said, this book was amazing. I know that I left out a couple of things. I know some people could be like, why did you talk about Dr. Nemesis and Dazzler hooking up? It's like, it's not, until it becomes important, it's not really important. It was Stacy X just fucking with Dr. Nemesis because he always lashes out at Dazzler. As far back as Way of X number 1, even he was talking smack about Dazzler, and it's because deep down she was proving a point that even though he talks crap about her, he actually secretly has an interest in her. Point of the matter is, Onslaught is on track to be what is arguably probably one of my new favorite villains in all of the X-Men universe now. And I used to hate this guy. Like, I used to hate this guy with a passion. Like, seriously, I used to hate him, and Cy Spurrier is finding ways to make him a more personal and more contained villain that makes more sense. But that said, if you enjoyed this video, Hulk smash that like button and make sure to share the video all over the internet and with all your friends so they'll know how you leveled up your comic book big brain in regards to Way of X and the Hellfire Gala. On your way out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought about Way of X number 3. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.